This is Paul Schneiderman today on the 156th edition of the Sports Untold podcast. I have back again Greg Lewis, University of Washington football legend, currently a panelist on the Husky Honks show on Seattle's KGR 93.3. Greg, go back to you in a minute. My podcast is now on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, Google, iTunes, Podbeam. You go to sportsuntoldpodcast.net or go to my law office website, plslawoffices.com. Of course, I allow everyone to click the like button if one so chooses. Livia's my producer and assistant. She just started her first week at Seattle University School of Law, and she is still involved in this podcast. I love it. So Olivia's going to continue to do this. Although she's very busy with her studies right now. All right, Greg, back to you. You have come on every year since I first started this little project in 2017. You've come back every year. The last several years, we've been doing a Husky Football Preview show. And Greg, of course, is a Husky football legend, finished sixth in the Heisman Trophy vote in 1990. Greg played in the NFL for the Denver Broncos. So what a treat to have you back. And today we're going to talk about the Huskies, Big Ten football, college football, a little pro football, maybe a few other subjects as well. So always a treat to have Greg on. Greg is basically an expert witness when it comes to football matters on the field stuff, off the field stuff. It's always a pleasure. Greg, thanks for coming back.
I'm always happy to be here, Paul. Talking Husky football is something I enjoy doing. And I love your podcast. I love the work that you're doing and the different angles that you present sports in. And so I'm happy to be back. I
Well,
must
it
have
means
said
a lot,
something.
Greg. I'm trying to build up the podcast, but whether it gets really big or not, I'm having a heck of a time doing it. And that's the number one thing. So,
Absolutely.
well, here's my first question for you. I ask a whole bunch of different kinds of questions. Jedd Fisch became the Husky coach the 24th season. The team went 6-7 last year, narrowly lost the Sun Bowl to Louisville. When you consider that the Huskies had their first year in the Big Ten last year under Fisch, he took over a team that had some major gaps in the roster when DeBoer left for Alabama.
Mhm.
Also a first-year coach. So just I want you to throw into some of those factors when I ask you to grade Jedd Fisch's first year.
Mhm.
What'd you give Jedd's first year? B minus, B plus. What'd you
Yeah.
give him?
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think a B minus is what I would give him. And that's for several factors. I give him, probably a B to B plus for assembling a team on the run with very little time, not having his full assistant coaching staff in place until he, was finished with the recruiting. We got through that period. And that can be tough in this day and age because one, you got to come in, you got to find out what NIL resources do we have, what positions do we really need to shore up. So for him to put together a team that made a bowl game in that short period of time, I give him, maybe a B, solid B, B plus, maybe even. But I think when you look at the outcome of the season, I thought we were talented enough to win 8 games. There were 2 games last year that were lost that shouldn't have been. We ended up 6-6, but I think we should have actually gone, 8-4, and that's because the 2 games against the was it Rutgers and Washington State were games I thought that we definitely won. Oh man, sorry there. Did I lose you guys? Am I Paul? Did I
I
lose
can
you?
hear you, Greg.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
No,
sorry
we're
for
good.
that.
We're good.
I thought the Rutgers game and the Washington State game were lost through some probably, decisions the coaches would like to have back, especially against Washington State that last play of the game. And the Rutgers, you had a player who, through some crazy reason, ran out the field in the middle of a live ball, and that's discipline that has to be instituted from the coaching staff so that people always know what to do at any time. So I give them that B minus because I thought they did a great job putting the team together, getting in the offense and things that they like to run. But I thought from an execution standpoint, there were some things that they probably tell you they'd like to have back. Overall,
Greg,
good season, but I think it could have been better.
Greg, I can't see you. Feel free to pop back on the screen if you like.
Can you? Okay, I'm sorry.
It's
Here,
all right. No, I can hear you at least, but feel free to pop
all
back
right.
on the screen.
Let me see.
Yeah, no problems.
Here, yeah, there was an issue with my computer, and so
Well, I can hear you at least. It's not the end of the world. There we go. I still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect, perfect. No
Okay.
problems. That happens. Yeah, no, that sounds like a really fair evaluation. So you like how he was like as a general manager, kind of putting the roster together. You thought he did a pretty solid job, but there are a few
Yeah,
game day decisions that you mentioned that have
yeah,
come under a little scrutiny. Yeah.
yeah. And I also thought he did a great job putting together a coaching staff. I'm super excited this year coming up with the new defensive coordinator that you guys will hear a lot about coming over from being a head coach with Purdue last for a couple of years. So I think he did a good job putting the coaching staff together and then establishing sort of a culture for the program and sort of what the University of Washington was going to be known for. You may have hear this if you're a Husky fan, but they have this kind of mantra called "Be a Pro," and that's their approach to recruiting, to development, and to how they run their program. Which a lot of these kids are really coming in and wanting to get to the NFL. And of course, every program says that that's part of what they're doing, but I think these guys really emphasize that throughout their program.
Well, I was going
I
to ask
think
you later about a couple of the new assistants, but you beat me to it. You
yeah,
partially answered a question I had. No, appreciate the analysis, and we'll definitely talk more Husky football. But I got a few other football related questions for you in the meantime.
right.
So I got this book here, The Football 100
Mm-hmm.
by a couple writers of the Atlantic, and I haven't finished it. I've read part of it, and I want to read you the top five players these guys have in NFL history. And for Seattle Seahawks fans, Greg, I know you're a Bronco, but you live in Seattle. But for a lot of people here listening are Seahawks fans. Largent is ranked 64 and Walter Jones is 65. Your
Mm-hmm.
teammate, former teammate John Elway is 15, by the way. So here's his
Mm-hmm.
top five. Give me your take, Greg. One, he has Tom Brady, or they have. One is Tom Brady, two is Jim Brown, three is Jim Rice, four is Lawrence Taylor, five is Reggie White. What's your reaction to those top five?
I mean, those are all great. I'll be honest and say I don't know a lot about Jim Rice. So,
Jerry Rice.
yeah. Oh, Jerry Rice.
Jerry
I
Rice,
thought
sorry,
you
Jerry
said Jim
Rice.
Rice. I was going to say, I do know who Jerry Rice
Of
is. And
course.
I would maybe switch that up a little bit, but those are probably my top five. I mean, it's hard to go against Tom Brady with all the championships, but then I would probably go Jerry Rice second.
Oh,
Um, then probably Jim Brown third, and then there's this Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor, Deion Sanders. Those three got to fight for those two spots. So
you
I
put
think
Dion as a top 100 player?
oh yeah, Deion Sanders, what he was able to do and how he's able to impact the game on both sides of the ball, offensively, defensively, and on special teams. And when Deion was playing, there was no better corner cover in the league. And I think you can see his impact. There was a year where he went to the San Francisco 49ers. They won the Super Bowl. The next year he left, went to the Dallas Cowboys, and they won the Super Bowl. I think Deion was a big, big part of that, ability to win, makes plays on both offense and defense, special teams, and just that confidence and ability he gave you to set 10 other players on defense to do all of the work because he had this whole side of the field locked down. So I would definitely put Dion,
I gotta check.
like
I
I
don't know
said,
if he's in their top 100. Let me check. Yeah, he was great, great athlete, Dion. We know that.
Dion's got to be in the top 100 NFL players of all time because he's arguably the best corner ever. You got to have your shutdown corner in there, especially with today's passing and attacks that started all the way back in the run and shoot and the West Coast offense days. That corner was really important.
By the way, I get to pretend like I'm Greg Lewis today wearing a Husky t-shirt. We both have Husky t-shirts on. So I can pretend like I'm Bruner or Brunel or Lewis or Napoleon, whatever. Yeah, no, I've had fun. Okay, so I don't have all the sabermetrics crunching in front of me, but I have heard some arguments that there's some better quarterbacks in NFL history than Tom Brady. I mean, I don't know if you can make a case that Elway was better than Brady. I don't know, or Johnny Unitas, whatever. But anyhow,
Yeah,
okay. So you generally think that's a pretty good top five list then?
absolutely. And to your point, I think there might have been quarterbacks that were more talented than him from the standpoint they had better arm talent or they were more athletic and could move around better. But when you brought it all together and see what Tom Brady was able to do in the most important moments of games, and with less wide receiver talent around him, other than a couple years where he had Randy Moss, he didn't have the best receivers in the league. I think he proved by winning 6 Super Bowls in New England, then leaving and winning another one with a Tampa Bay team that hadn't got close, that he is in that greatest quarterback ever in that GOAT conversation. So I think the ultimately team sports, you want to win a championship, and he was able to win it more than anyone else and in multiple places.
I think that's a great point. What Brady did later in his career at the Buccaneers when he was in his 40s is pretty darn impressive. Yeah, yeah, that's okay. So I had on the former Meet the Press guy on my podcast here is Chuck Todd, and he's also a sports commentator. And the other day, Chuck on his podcast was interviewing Colin Cowherd, the well-known football or radio broadcaster. I think he's on Fox now, but Cowherd's interesting. And so here's Chuck's idea. He's mentioned it several times on his podcast, and he brought it up to Colin Cowherd the other day. I want to get your take on this. So Chuck thinks that the NCAA should have all the bowl games as inaugural regular season games in late August, early September. So like basically move the Sun Bowl and the Independence Bowl to late August, early September, and have some fun inaugural season game matchups. He'd like to see the bowl games completely changed. He thinks that would also alleviate the problems of many players not playing the December bowl games or January bowl games because they want to prepare for the NFL draft. What are your thoughts on moving a lot of the bowl games or all the bowl games to beginning of the year?
Well, I think there's the element of earning a bowl game that would be lost in that scenario. I know nowadays they have more bowl games than teams who meet the quote unquote criteria of what it takes to play in a bowl game. But I still think there's that sense of if we keep working hard, we keep grinding, we win enough games, we can get to a bowl game. And then it's sort of a reward at the end of the season for a hard year. And I know there are going to be guys that opt out. And that's just the way football is now. So you got to take, just change as it comes, that this is where it's going to be. But to put them at the beginning of the year, I don't know what criteria you determine. Is it based on last season's results? And now you're rewarding kids who may not even been there, and the kids who earned it aren't there. It might be that last opportunity for a kid to get a look before the draft and combine and all those kinds of things. So I don't think I would necessarily be in favor of that. I understand you can still have the pomp and pageantry, but the Rose Bowl parade around New Year's Day and all that excitement, I think you would lose a lot that is a part of what college football is. Although, there's been a lot of changes already. That would be one I wouldn't want to see happen.
The major bowl games still can host the playoffs because I think some of the bowl games are hosting the top 12 playoffs, correct? Some of the top 12
I believe so, but I guess I would need to know more about how they're planning on, or the scenario that they're talking about there by moving to get into the year. But again, I still think there's that you earn a bowl game. It's a reward for a certain amount of success during the season, and those are. I think when you're a football player or any athlete, you play to ultimately gain some sort of prize and respect and all of those things. So I think that's a reward to keep people motivated for playing well throughout the season, even if they're not going to be the national champions.
Those are good points you brought up. By the way, I can hear you just fine, Greg, but I can't see you, but it's not the end of the world as long as I can hear you.
All
So,
right. Not sure exactly what's going on,
no,
but
it's all good as long as I can hear you. Greg,
right.
You played for the Denver Broncos. There you are. And my friend Nate Hirsch, or Zeke Hirsch, his dad, Joel, is a friend of mine and also knows Olivia's family. Um, Zeke grew up in Boulder, and he wants to know. He's now a college baseball player at Pacific University in Oregon. He wants to know, Greg, what do opponents do to prepare for football games against Colorado teams such as the Denver Broncos and Colorado Buffaloes because of the altitude in the Denver area? Any special conditioning that opposing teams do during the week before those Colorado games?
Because I was on the Denver Broncos, I'm not exactly sure what the opponents would do, but my senior year, we did go up to Boulder and play in Colorado in that thin air. And I do remember just some slight additional conditioning that we did in preparation that week, but nothing extremely out of the ordinary. I think it's more psychological that they're, trying to get us to understand that there might be a little less oxygen in the air, control your breathing a little bit, and making sure that they have oxygen on the sideline. So if there was someone who needed that little extra oxygen after running a long play down the field or something like that, that it was there. But not necessarily doing a lot of additional things in order to prepare. It's just mind over matter a lot of times in situations like that.
Interesting. I can hear you, but you're frozen, Greg, on the screen. But again, as long as I can hear you, we're good. So no problems. Um, and so really that's interesting. So no really major special condition. I was kind of wondering if maybe like the last 30 plus years with medical advances or conditioning advances, but maybe there was some new
And
situation.
maybe they do today, but I mean, I'm an insider, but not all the way inside. I don't,
Okay. Okay.
if I go to practice, usually I'm up in the confines of a press box somewhere, watching through my binoculars, and not necessarily noticing whether they're doing something extra.
Fair enough. No, fair enough. But thanks for your insights. I know Zeke will appreciate hearing your response there.
Right.
All right, okay. Now this dovetails a little bit here. Speaking of Colorado football, a big football story this year in 2025 has been former Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders, the son of Deion Sanders, who was his coach at Colorado, falling significantly in the NFL
Mm-hmm.
draft. The Cleveland Browns later picked him. So, Greg, I
Mm-hmm.
want your take about Shedeur Sanders falling in the 2025 NFL draft. Is it because one, a lot of teams are worried about the strong influence of his father Dion, maybe interfering with the roster? Two, did Shadir's apparent attitude turn off some teams during his pre-draft discussions with different teams? Or three, did scouts just legitimately think he wasn't good enough to be a top draft pick? Or maybe a combination of all those reasons. Kind of help us figure that out. Why Shadir
Mm-hmm.
dropped so much in the draft, Greg?
Well, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think I'll say this: if you are the absolute best player, surefire, no, question about it, best player in the draft, you're probably going to still, be somewhere around that first round. Like Randy Moss, he dropped in the draft. He should have been the first overall pick, but he ended up going 10th, things like that. But I think sometimes NFL teams get too concerned or worried about things that they don't need to be concerned or worried about. I think Deion Sanders will only benefit his son as a father who's involved with him in the NFL. He's not going to necessarily be an obstacle to teams. He's going to help his son navigate through that. Shadeur's confidence, I think, is nothing that is going to turn his teammates off and against him. I've seen some of the most confident players be some of the best leaders on football teams. So I think erroneously,
Hmm.
teams were worried and concerned about those things. And I think, him being in training camp like he is now, you're going to have some good days. You're going to have some bad days. You're going to have some good performance, some bad performance when you're a young player and you're growing and learning. But I think he has a talent, skill set to be a really good football player. And, teams were too worried about things they didn't need to be worried about. And I think, it is in the NFL, there's some cultural differences. And I think when folks who are making all decisions, have a cultural perspective and other folks have a different culture, sometimes it's hard to get past that because you're thinking those things are going to be a negative when it actually could end up being a positive in your organization. So I think Shedeur Sanders is a really good quarterback. He wasn't so great that it was a no-brainer. He's going in the first round no matter what. So again, a combination. It was all right. He may not be the number one surefire pick. There could be some distractions. He's he may be a guy who his teammates, but I think all of those were false assumptions. And I think he's going to have a great career as long as he continues to grow and get better.
So you think the NFL teams got a little bit carried away with those first two factors I mentioned? One, the likely influence of his father Dion. Two, Shadir supposedly being a little cocky. You think the
Yeah,
scouts maybe got a little, or the got a little carried away with those first two? Okay,
yeah, absolutely. What professional athlete? Tom Brady is one of the cockiest. I mean, Aaron Rodgers might be the most cocky, arrogant football player I've ever seen. Tom Brady
sure.
has a lot of cockiness and arrogance. It may show in different ways, but those
Right.
are cultural differences. They're not necessarily values or who you are as a person differences. I think those things just look different in different people. And so there's still always going to be that dynamic in the NFL where folks who grew up rich and billionaires and live in that world have cultural norms and things that they see and they expect. And then folks who may not grow up as privileged and they may be expressing that same confidence, but it just looks different. And so the other group mistakes that for something, and then they get concerned about it because it looks foreign to them. But I think, again, Shedeur has been in Cleveland. I haven't heard any reports about his arrogance or whatever alienating the team. He looks like a good leader when he's out there on the field. He's going to have good performances and bad performances. I'm not, as a former player, you don't overreact to either in the preseason. It's what happens every day in practice. And is he getting better? Is he making his reads on time and on target? Will people follow him on the field and in the huddle? Is he tough enough? All of those things that will determine ultimately what his future is. But I didn't think there was any, even Cam Ward, I don't think there was any guaranteed surefire, number one franchise quarterbacks in the draft this year. I think they all have growth that they need to achieve. They all need to get better. They all need to prove themselves.
One more question, Shedeur, and we'll move on. Great. Do you think maybe he wasn't a first round pick, but he should have been a second or third round draft pick, maybe? Is that a good way of summarizing where you're at? He ended up being like,
Well,
what, a sixth round, I think, or something like that?
yeah, I think certainly his talent is way above a sixth round pick. But again, when you have people making those decisions that are knowing that they're rolling the dice on millions and millions of dollars, they start to overanalyze things.
Right.
And, if you miss on a first round draft pick, it could be a big deal. If you miss on a sixth round draft pick, maybe not so much a big deal. But
Good
again,
point.
I think Shedeur Sanders definitely is way above, from a talent standpoint, a sixth round draft pick. Having said that, that still doesn't mean he's going to be a franchise quarterback. I hope he is, and he's got to put that work in and he's got to get there. It happens. Russell Wilson was a third round draft pick. I think Tom Brady was a sixth round draft pick. So ultimately, the goal now is go out, play, get better, and prove yourself.
Great insights. Okay, my friend Dean Nielsen has a question for Greg, and I know you're a Denver Broncos fan. You play for the Broncos. You're not a huge Seahawks fan, but you do live in Seattle and you follow the Hawks a
Mm-hmm.
bit. What is your take between who, and you know the running back position very well. What's your
Mm-hmm.
take on who your Seahawks should start between Kenneth Walker III and Zach Charbonnet? Dean's curious to get your take on those running backs.
Yeah, I love both of them for different reasons. Charbonnet obviously is more similar, I
Charbonnet,
would
sorry.
say, yeah,
Yes.
to the type of running back that I was, where power, strength, cut, get downfield. But Kenneth Walker is such a home run threat. It's hard not to have him on the field. I loved watching him in college. Voted for him as the Walker Award winner. Think he can, change a game in a heartbeat. He just stays hurt, stays injured. So I would probably at the beginning of the year go ahead and start him, hoping that he stays healthy. And then if he ends up not being healthy, then go with Charbonnet. But I would play both of them quite a bit. But I would start with Kenneth Walker just because he has the ability to change a game in one play. Charbonnet, though, is going to be your meat potatoes guy, a guy who doesn't get hurt a lot, who's been really, really consistent. So I like both. But you always love that one toy that can really be exciting and do some fantastic things, as opposed to that toy that's just always there, consistent, and going to do you'll have some fun with it now and then.
But use a baseball analogy. Kenneth Walker III is more of a home run hitter.
Yeah,
Charbonnet is more of a singles hitter, kind of. Yeah.
exactly. Singles. He hit some doubles.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, no. Well, I appreciate that. A good analysis. Okay, Greg. So you're the third person I've asked this question to, and after I ask this question, tell me, grade this question. Let me know if I should keep asking this question. I'm curious to get your take on this. Okay, you're born in 1969.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what president in your lifetime you would enjoy having a 1 hour sports only conversation with. I'm going to go through the presidents in your lifetime. You're born in 1969. Nixon, he was a big sports fan, played some football. I'll give little clues on their sports background. President
Yeah.
Ford played college football. President Carter, tennis player, liked the outdoors, played softball, big Atlanta sports fan. Carter was the first president to host a Super Bowl team, by the way.
Hmm.
Reagan played some football, was a football broadcast one time. Of course, he played the Gipper in a movie. Bush
Hmm.
41 was a Yale baseball player. Clinton, big Arkansas basketball fan, is a sports connection I can find with him.
Right.
Bush 43 was a baseball owner of the Texas Rangers. Obama, huge basketball fan. Trump was a USF owner, said he was a great baseball player, and he also has a wrestling tie. Biden played some football, and there's Trump again. Which president, Greg, if you could spend an hour talking sports only with all the aforementioned, who would you pick?
Well, probably the only two that I probably could have some good conversations with would be Ronald Reagan and President Barack Obama. Because I'd love to kind of get Reagan's take on football back then and
Yeah,
then playing in the movie, what that was
yeah,
like.
yeah,
I asked Jim Brown some questions about being an actor as a former football player, so just kind of that
yeah, yeah, yeah,
deal. And then
yeah.
I'm a huge, huge basketball fan,
Right.
college and pro. And so I know Barack Obama is a big fan as well. So I think those two would probably be the most interesting for a sit
Sports.
down hour long conversation. I kind of am curious about football back in the early days of the evolution of the game. I watched a special on the SEC evolution on ESPN, kind of how it started, and guys were dying and they were going to ban football and all that kind of stuff. So I do like historical context around football. But college basketball, the Final Four, and all that stuff, most exciting time of the year outside of the Super Bowl and the national championship game. So I'm definitely sure I could have some good
I had
conversations
Chris
with you.
Cillizza on my show, formerly of CNN. He wrote a book about the presidents in sports, which is kind of a fun book. I'll
Mm.
throw a plug for Chris's book. So I asked Chuck Todd that question. He answered 1A. 1A was Bush 43, because he's a huge baseball fan. Love to get
Baseball.
Bush's take on being a baseball owner. And he answered Obama because Obama's
Mm-hmm.
a huge basketball fan. So okay, all right, fun, fun. Just want to get your take. There's no right answer, wrong answer. Um, Now we're going back to Husky football.
Mm-hmm.
Husky 2025 Big Ten predictions. I see that the Huskies are picked by a lot of pundits to be about the ninth or 10th best of the 18 teams. That's some different articles I'm reading. That's the general
Mm-hmm.
sort of
Mm-hmm.
trend I'm seeing. Is that, you think they're about in the middle of the Big Ten right now?
I would say the top of the middle or the top third of the Big Ten right now. I think there's, I get a chance to go to practice sometimes and watch some things happen, and they have three players on their offensive side of the ball that definitely could end up being, all conference type of players. Damon Williams, obviously the quarterback, isn't the first choice. I think there's the guy at Penn State that's pretty darn good that might end up being all conference. But I think Damon Williams, it brings an element to Husky football that even Isaiah Stanback and I'm sorry, Jake Locker did not bring to the team with his ability to run, accelerate, and go full speed, at the drop of a hat. And then Jonah Coleman is going to be one of the best running backs in the country. And he's in better shape this year and stronger this year. And he came back for a purpose and he's driven to do that. So I'm excited about what he's going to look like. And Denzel Boston last year as a first time starter ended up being a really good player for us. He ended up scoring a lot of touchdowns. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. He's big, strong. He's more experienced now. So when you have playmakers like that, you have a chance to be really good and you can end up beating anybody. I think the difference between the middle Big Ten teams and the top Big Ten teams, that gap is kind of closing up a little bit. Of course, I believe Penn State's probably the best team in the country. Ohio State's defending champ. Oregon was in the playoffs last year. Outside of those three teams, I think everyone else in the Big Ten can beat anyone else on any given day, and that means that the Huskies, when you look at their schedule, have an opportunity, in my mind, to win 9 football games. They just got to figure out between Ohio State Michigan, Illinois, and Oregon. Can we win 2 of those games? And we got 2 of them at home, or 3 of them at home, actually. So I think that gives us that fighting chance. And so I don't see any reason why. Of course, it's just going to come down to not the offensive line like most people think, because I think with weapons like that, you can move your offensive line, use some zone blocking schemes, use some play calls to protect your, and especially when you have a scrambling quarterback like that a little bit, it's really going to come down to the defensive line. Can we week in and week out hold up to these teams in the Big Ten like Wisconsin and Indiana and Michigan, who are and Ohio State are just going to run the football down your throat if you let them. And that is where the crux lies for the Huskies this year. If their defensive line can hold up, then I think they have a chance to be in that upper third of the Big Ten.
Greg, real quickly, so you the Husky Honks show that you host with Dave Softy Mahler and Mario Bailey, both have been on my podcast. What road games are you guys planning to attend this year as part of your KJR duties?
Right. We'll definitely be in Wisconsin. We'll definitely be in Washington State early in the year. We may go to Michigan. We were just there a couple of years ago, so that was kind of up in the air. But those are 2 road games that we will definitely venture down to. I think Wisconsin might be one of the only places in the Big Ten / old Pac-12 that I have not journeyed to just yet. So that'll give me an opportunity to, kind of go to a city I haven't been at, where I know football means a lot and there's a huge crowd, and that's going to be a fun trip for us.
Well, I may be going to that game. I hope to have a chance to say hello to you.
That'd be fun. You still there? Hello?
I'm here. Hopefully he'll make it back. Oh, there we go.
Hi, Greg.
Hello.
Are you back? Oh, good. We're good. Hey, Olivia, jump in here with a question. It's good time.
Okay, so it's more about keeping tabs on former UW players. Do you have any this year, upcoming NFL season, that you think could have a surprising breakout season?
I am looking for Rome Odunze, who was a fabulous wide receiver for the Washington Huskies. He had a good rookie year, but I think this year he can have a breakout season. Certainly, the quarterback that Chicago has Caleb Williams has got to have a good season in order for Rome to. But he's the person that I'm really looking to have that breakout season, and excited to see him go out and do his thing. He was such a clutch player for us, big plays all the time, and I think he can be a great NFL wide receiver. So looking forward to him.
Any Husky players, Greg, that the big names you have are some of the guys you mentioned, like Williams and Boston and Coleman. Any other guys on the squad that you think could have a great 2025 year? I know there's a couple transfers coming in, like Tacario Davis, Arizona transfer quarterback, Carver Willis, offensive lineman from Kansas State. I don't know. Is there any player in particular that could be a surprise in the 25 season?
Well, I do. And when you say surprise, I guess, it kind of depends on what you mean when you say that.
True.
I do believe that our Prysock and our other cornerback, the 2 transfers that have come in the last 2 years from Tacario Davis and Prysock, Ephesians Prysock, should have good years this year. They're seniors. This is their last opportunity to impress the NFL scouts. There's going to be, a familiarity having them both now with the Washington Huskies, where they play off of each other. So I think those guys really have an opportunity to have breakout years. And, when you look at them out there, they're big and tall and strong. They look like NFL, football. They look like the Richard Shermans, that we used to have in our secondary with the Seahawks. And I say we, because like you said earlier, I do live here in Seattle. And so I'm looking forward to those guys really, really having a breakout season this year. And my sort of, hopeful, most favorite character is, oh gosh, all of a sudden his name just jumped out of my head. The outside linebacker, defensive end that transferred in from one of the lower divisions. He's just been hurt the last couple of years. And so I'm looking forward to him having I don't know why his name just jumped out of my head,
Jacob Manu
but he's
comes
one
up
of
as
our
a good a promising linebacker. And there's Landon Hatchett,
well,
a top lineman.
no, yeah. I was just thinking one of our outside linebackers, a
Okay.
kid who was ineligible his first year. Then last year he hurt his toe, and he was out for the whole year with turf toe. He's a kid that transferred in from where I think he transferred in from where Coach DeBoer coached when he coached the lower division. And so I don't know why I forgot his name all of a sudden, but it'll come back to me and I'll mention him. But he's another guy who's just a favorite that I hope has a good season because he's gone through so much. He transferred in from a low division with all the hype that he's going to be this great rush in. And then the NC2A held him all the way out for the whole year. His first year he transferred in. And then last year, after a 2.5 sack game right out the gate, he hurt his toe and he was out the rest of the year. So I'm hopeful that kid, has a good year too.
We'll have to watch that young man. Hey, Greg, what's with the Big
Zach
Ten?
Durfee. I'm sorry, Zach Durfee. That's who I'm talking
about. Okay, Zach.
Durfee.
Greg, real quickly, do you see a case for the Big Ten, especially the Big 18? Could you make a case to have like 2 9-team divisions, or maybe it could become the Big 20 one day and add 2 more teams? How would you like the idea of having 2 separate divisions of this large conference?
Yeah, I think you could regionalize it a little better, and then focus on teams that are in closer proximity to one another playing. Of course, you got to figure that out to make sure that there's some, parity in the 2 conferences or the 2 divisions of the conference. But I think this conference expansion is going to continue where, we'll probably end up with 20 some odd teams and the SEC will end up with 20 some odd teams. And they'll both have a West Coast and an East Coast division. And we'll be back to playing a lot of the teams that we played in the old PAC conference anyway. I think that's coming. This is going to continue to be driven by the network's desire to own the airwaves from early in the morning till late at night. So they're trying to find teams in every area to pull into their conferences and sell television rights for billions and billions of dollars. So it's coming. And I think, what you're mentioning is just a matter of time. It will happen sooner or later.
Well, I don't know, Greg. We'll see in the 2030s if the NCAA even exists. I mean, there's a lot of changes going on in college football. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
and it looks more and more like professional football every single day. And with that, we know money rules. And so whatever is going to make the most dollars is going to make the most sense.
Right. Greg, let me retro for a minute. You mentioned a point about President Reagan in sports that I hadn't really quite thought of. Is it would have been interesting to talk about sports movies. He apparently wasn't the most knowledgeable, like box score sports fan, President Reagan, but he probably would have had some really interesting things to say about sports movies. And on that note, I can't remember I've asked you. I may have asked this, but I don't remember. Have I ever asked you what your favorite sports movies are?
I don't think you have.
Okay, well, I'm asking it now then. What's your favorite sports movie or two?
I'm going to give you some that don't even really seem like they would be favorite sports movies. But
Okay.
When I was a little kid, my favorite basketball player was Dr. J. And basketball was a sport I loved equally with football. And he was in a movie called The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh.
I loved it.
And it's like a rom-com starring Dr. J. And it was a hilarious movie. That's one of my favorite sports movies of all time. Yeah, I do love the Brian Piccolo story starring Billy D. Williams.
Me too.
That was about Gale Sayers and Brian Piccolo and their relationship. And then I'll give you another one, a more contemporary one. I'm a big fan, and as you know, I have daughters who all play college basketball. I'm a big fan of Love and Basketball with Omar Epps and Sanaa Lathan. So those are 3. I wanted to give you a standard, a Brian song, a standard one. But then also 2 that are kind of off the trail a little bit with The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh and Love and Basketball.
By the way, Greg, I'll have to maybe give you a copy of the book for fun. There's a top 100 sports book I have. It came out 2009. It's a little older now, and The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh was a top 100. So Yeah, so that's a great movie,
Love that
great movie.
movie.
But I met Dr. J once. I told him I liked his
Yeah,
performance in Fish at Pittsburgh.
yeah. I
So
still call him Moses Guthrie from time to time.
yeah, yeah. Those
Which
are
was
the
the name of the
and
movie.
another movie. Speaking of like women's basketball, The Heart of the Game that took place at Roosevelt High School is a great one. So
Well, I'm not a. I'm going to tell you why I'm not a big fan, and it's a personal reason.
you
They
like
made
Roosevelt
that
Mountain.
movie. Oh no, Roosevelt won the state championship the year that they did that movie, and they beat my daughter's Garfield High School team in the state championship
Oh, they did.
that
Okay,
year.
okay,
So
okay.
my daughter was on the team, and I always tell people, you know what? Yep, Roosevelt won that state championship. They earned it, whatever. But we beat them 3 times that year
Okay.
leading up to the state championship game by more than 20 points and went into the championship feeling like it was an easy win. And they fought, and they came back, and they actually beat us for the first time that year.
And Joyce Walker's been on my podcast. She was the Garfield coach that time. Yeah.
Yes, he was. Yep. I
Yeah.
had 2 daughters play for Joyce at Garfield.
Oh, you did? Okay, good, good, good.
I did.
Greg, will you always have a soft spot for the Pac-10? And are you rooting for them in the newly reconfigured Pac-10?
It's just not. It's not the same conference. The heart of that conference has been ripped out and gone. Without a USC, on a Washington, and those teams, it just is a shell, and I just it's unrecognizable. Even over the years, where it went from the Pac-8 to the Pac-10 to the Pac-12, it had those signature foundational teams always in it. And USC, for even though I'm a Husky, I'll say USC has always been the best team on the West Coast, and everybody's modeled. Even Don James said, if we're going to be who we want to be, USC is the target. And without USC being in a conference, and then of course Washington, who's been super successful in that conference as well, USC, UCLA, Washington, and then lately Oregon, in the latter half of the conference, were the teams that really drove the mantra and the flag for the Pac-10. Not being in it, it's not the same thing. So, I mean, yeah, I have some nostalgic, for the conference itself, but I think the teams that are left don't really always reflect really what the Pac-10, Pac-8, Pac-12 was.
I just thought of something, Greg, and this is not a perfect analogy, but maybe like the National Invitational Tournament at NIT in basketball. At one time it was the like Final Four. At one time the NIT was the major tournament, and then the NCAA took it over. The NIT has still existed in some forms. I don't know. Is that a bad
Mm-hmm.
kind of sort of a loose analogy to the new Pac-10 maybe, but it's just
Yeah.
different, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
You
nobody
don't have a
watches
major
the NIT
you
anymore.
don't have a major soft spot for the new Pac-10 is kind of what I'm hearing, so.
For the conference itself, yeah, it should have never gone away.
Yeah.
Here's an analogy for me. Every year around the baseball trading deadline, you got buyers, you got sellers, you got teams who, because they're in it to win, they're buyers. They're going out and buying players. Then you got teams who've given up. They can't win, so their best players even are up for grabs. I felt like I knew this conference realignment stuff was coming and happening, but I felt like the Pac conference should have been a buyer and not a seller. We should have been acquiring teams instead of our teams leaving and going somewhere else. And the ACC and the Big 12 are more conferences I felt like should have been sellers. And so the fact that we ended up losing our conference hurt me tremendously. But now we got to move on. We just got to move on.
All right, you mentioned something about baseball. It's August 24th of 2025 when the Mariners make their first World Series this year.
We're just that team that's destined not to make the World Series. I don't know why. And I am a fan. And I hate to, be glass half empty, but I've just been let down so many times. If we couldn't go to the World Series the year we had the best team in the history of the game with some of the best players, solid pitching, hitting everywhere, it's hard for me to imagine Houston just always has our number. It seems like, either them or the Yankees are going to find a way to beat us, even if we make the playoffs. So I guess I'm a spurned Mariner fan.
Yeah, we're kind of like the Charlie Brown of pro sports franchises, the Mariners, so yeah, I hear you. Another Seattle sports question. Should have two more. Are we gonna get the Sonics back by the 2030s?
I've been told that we are by some incredible people, so I'm going to hold on to that belief. Out of all the Seattle sports franchises, the Sonics have been my favorite, not just because they won a championship, but I got to know a lot of the players personally over the years. I know Sam Perkins, I know Gary Payton, Sean Kemp. Those are, players. Even Gus Williams, I played golf with him several times. Got to know him a little bit. Lonnie Shelton, his son, played basketball at the UW. John Johnson, I played golf with him many times before he passed. So those are, reasons why I've always been,
Me
a
too.
huge Seattle Supersonic fan. And they did win a championship when I was a kid. And, I remember all the horns honking
Oh
and
yeah.
the parade and all that good stuff. And Slick Watts has always been a really good friend of mine. So I'm going to believe that we're going to get the Sonics back.
Greg was part of my growing up experience in Seattle to the Sox. Hope we get him back.
Right.
Pete Carroll and the Raiders, what do you think?
He still seems to have a lot of juice left and the energy and excitement. And maybe that's exactly what he needed, a new place to go start over and inject some of that life in it. I think the Raiders as a team are still, a couple of players away from, being a football power. But I like the Gentry pickup that they made because they've always been sort of that running tough type of football team. I think that, is going to be good for them. They just got to get their quarterback situation. Is Geno the guy? Is Geno still got, some great performance left in him? And then, who are going to be their weapons on the outside that are consistent enough to give him, those targets. So their defense, I think, over the last couple of years has gotten pretty good under some tough-nosed coaches, even though those guys weren't able to get the offensive side right. So we'll see. I think with Pete Carroll, pretty soon. So in the next year or two, we'll know whether or not he can get that team rocking and rolling.
I think they went about 5-12 last year, the Raiders. Let's see if Pete can
Yeah.
transform them. Well,
Yeah,
Greg, always
offensively they're challenged.
what's that?
I said offensively they've been challenged.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We'll see what Gino can do. But well, Greg, always fun. Anything else you want to share about the Huskies this year? Big Ten football. Feel free to share another point or two, and I'll let you go after that. Anything you want to share?
Yeah, I just want you guys to get excited about our quarterback. I mean, this kid is phenomenal. You may, we saw him last year in the season, play pretty well, make some plays, but I don't think everybody knows even the tip of the iceberg of what Demond Williams can actually do. This kid he goes from 0 to 70 in about half a second. He's got an extremely strong arm. Smaller quarterbacks typically have a tough time throwing the ball across the middle, getting the ball over the linebackers, dropping it in between the safeties because of the trajectory of the ball, because of their height. But this kid has been throwing the ball on point, on time, on target throughout training camp. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. I think if our defensive line can hold up, we'll have some excitement this year where we're going to be in some games that people don't think we should be. And, we got a, outside chance at, like I said, 9-3 to me is where we should be. And if that means you're an upset win away from being 10-2, and if you're 10-2 in this conference, you're going to the playoffs. So I'm not predicting a playoff for the Huskies. I'm just saying, this team is a team to be excited about. It's a team that you want to come out and watch. They're going to make plays. Their quarterback is going to do some miraculous things. And it's just going to be a fun year for the Huskies.
Something else that interests me about the Huskies, right? Husky football right now is it just seems like so many fans in Husky Nation think Jedd Fisch is not going to be here that long. It'd be kind of a
Mm-hmm.
surprise in it being like a 10, 12-year coach here, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I just think people are, jaded because of the last few coaches, and I get it, understandably so. I can't judge whether he's going to be here that long or not until he proves me wrong. And so I think it's let's wait and see. This is a great college football job. He's making plenty of money. He's got lots of resources. So I think it certainly could be a long-term relationship, and I hope that it is.
Greg, always good to see you. Look forward to seeing you off the screen soon. I'll have you say goodbye to Olivia. Thanks for coming on.